No alien male dares approach her massive form. Only a human dared smile back. The massive trading station orbited the neutral moon of Keth Prime, where dozens of species gathered to conduct business. Across the galaxy, among the bustling crowds of various alien forms, moved beings of all sizes and temperaments, but none drew as much attention as Vhal'Zorah of the Titan race. Standing nearly 12 feet tall, with shoulders that could span a doorway and arms that could crush steel with ease, Vhal'Zorah commanded respect and fear wherever she walked. Her species, the Titans, were known throughout the galaxy as warriors and laborers whose physical prowess was unmatched. The deep purple skin stretched over mountainous muscles that rippled with each movement, while her forearms moved with surprising grace for someone of her immense size. Yet despite her intimidating appearance, Vhal'Zorah carried herself with quiet dignity. Her large violet eyes held intelligence and kindness that most beings never bothered to notice. They were too busy stepping aside when she approached or whispering among themselves about the massive female who could snap them in half without effort. The other Titans on the station were all males who worked in the heavy cargo bays, loading and unloading ships. They treated Vhal'Zorah with polite distance, knowing that among their people she was considered too large even by their standards. At nearly twice the size of a typical Titan male, and with unusual forearms instead of the normal 2, Vhal'Zorah was an anomaly that made even her own kind uncomfortable. She had come to Keth Prime seeking work, but found that most employers were either too intimidated to hire her, or had no use for someone of her unique proportions. The delicate negotiations and precise work that filled most positions on a trading station seemed impossible for hands that could palm a basketball like a marble. Days passed as Vhal'Zorah wandered the commercial levels searching for opportunity. She watched the smaller beings conduct their business with an efficiency her size would never allow. The graceful moth, like Vhal'Zorah, fluttered between stalls with gossamer wings, while the compact reptilian Corsi scurried through maintenance tunnels too small for most species to access. Even the human traders, who were considered medium-sized by galactic standards, seemed to flow through the crowds with ease. Vhal'Zorah had heard of humans, but had never encountered one personally. They were relatively new to the galactic community, and were known for their adaptability and strange tendency to form bonds with other species. It was during her 3rd day of unsuccessful job hunting that Vhal'Zorah first noticed him. The human stood barely 5.5 feet tall, with sandy brown hair, and wearing the simple coveralls of a maintenance worker. What struck her most was not his size, which was insignificant compared to hers, but the fact that when their eyes met across the crowded marketplace, he did not look away in fear or disgust. Instead, he smiled. It was a genuine expression of friendliness that Vhal'Zorah had not seen directed at her in longer than she could remember. The human held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded politely before returning to his conversation with a Corsi merchant. That evening, Vhal'Zorah found herself thinking about the encounter as she sat alone in her quarters. The room was one of the few on the station designed for larger species, but even so she had to duck to enter, and could not fully extend her arms without touching the walls. The loneliness that had been her constant companion felt heavier than usual. The next morning she encountered the human again in the central plaza. This time he approached her directly, walking up with the same friendly smile, and extending his hand in what she recognized as a human greeting gesture. "My name is Jack," he said, looking up at her without any trace of fear or intimidation. "I work in environmental systems here on the station." "I don't think we've been properly introduced." Vhal'Zorah stared down at the tiny hand extended toward her. Her own hand was easily 3 times the size, and she was afraid of accidentally crushing the delicate human bones. But something in his calm demeanor encouraged her to be gentle. She carefully took his hand in her smallest finger and thumb and shook it as delicately as she could manage. "I am Vera," she replied, her voice naturally deep and resonant. "I am seeking employment, but have had little success." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "What kind of work are you looking for?" "Something that makes use of my capabilities," she said, gesturing to her massive frame. "But it seems most positions require a more delicate touch than I can provide." "Have you considered the asteroid mining operations?" Jack asked. "They always need people who can handle heavy equipment and work in zero gravity. The pay is excellent, and size is actually an advantage out there." Vera had not considered mining work. Among her people, it was seen as crude labor, but she was in no position to be particular. "Do you know how I might apply?" Jack smiled again, and Vera felt something warm stir in her chest at the expression. "I actually have some contacts in the mining guild. If you are interested, I could put in a word for you." "That would be most generous," she said, feeling hope for the first time in weeks. "Why would you help me?" Jack shrugged as if the answer was obvious. "Because everyone deserves a chance to earn their place in the galaxy. And because I think you're probably capable of more than most people give you credit for." Over the following days, Jack proved to be as good as his word. He introduced Vera to his contacts in the mining guild, and vouched for her character and work ethic, despite knowing her for only a short time. His faith in her abilities was touching and completely foreign to her experience. The mining guild was initially skeptical, but Jack's recommendation carried weight. He had worked with many of the miners on environmental system repairs, and had earned their respect through competence and reliability. If Jack said someone was worth hiring, then they were willing to give that person a chance. Vera soon found herself on a mining vessel, heading toward the asteroid belt that surrounded Keth Prime. The work was exactly what she had needed. Her massive size and strength made her ideal for handling the heavy drilling equipment, while her forearms allowed her to operate multiple systems simultaneously. The mining crew was initially wary of her, but quickly came to appreciate her abilities. She could move equipment that would require teams of smaller workers, and her reach allowed her to access areas that were difficult for others to navigate. Within weeks, she had become an invaluable member of the crew. But it was not just her physical capabilities that impressed her colleagues. Vera had a natural understanding of three-dimensional space and mineral distribution that made her exceptionally skilled at identifying the most profitable drilling locations. Her suggestions consistently led to higher yields, and the crew began to rely on her expertise as much as her strength. The work was dangerous and demanding, but Vera thrived in the environment. For the first time in her life, she felt truly useful and appreciated. Her size was an asset rather than liability, and her unique physiology gave her advantages that no other species could match. During her time off shifts, Vera found herself thinking often of Jack. He had given her this opportunity and asked for nothing in return. She had tried to find ways to repay his kindness, but he always deflected her attempts, saying that seeing her succeed was payment enough. When the mining vessel returned to Keth Prime after a month-long operation, Vera had earned enough credits to secure better quarters and establish herself as a respected member of the mining community. She had also earned something more valuable than money: the respect of her peers and confidence in her own abilities. The first thing she did upon returning was seek out Jack. She found him in the Environmental Systems office working on a complex atmospheric recycling problem. When he saw her enter the room, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Vera," he said, standing up from his workstation. "How was your first mining run?" "It was everything you said it would be," she replied. "The work suits me perfectly, and the crew has accepted me as one of their own. I cannot express how grateful I am for your assistance." Jack waved off her thanks with typical human modesty. "I just made an introduction. You did all the hard work." Nevertheless, she continued, "I am in your debt. If there is ever anything I can do to repay your kindness, please let me know." Jack considered this for a moment, then smiled mischievously. "Actually, there is something you could help me with. I've been trying to repair some atmospheric processors in the upper levels, but they're installed in spaces that are too small for most species and too high for others. Someone with your reach and strength would be perfect for the job." Vera nodded eagerly. "I would be honored to assist you." Working together, they made an effective team. Jack had the technical knowledge, while Vera provided the physical capability to reach difficult locations and manipulate heavy equipment. Their partnership was natural and efficient, with each complementing the other's strengths. As they worked, Vera found herself enjoying Jack's company more than she had expected. He treated her as an equal and valued her opinions on technical matters. He also had a quick wit and easy humor that made even the most tedious repair work enjoyable. During breaks in their work, they would talk about their respective homeworlds and cultures. Jack was fascinated by Titan society and their emphasis on physical prowess, while Vera was intrigued by human adaptability and their seemingly endless capacity for forming connections with other species. It was during one of these conversations that Vera learned more about human nature than she had expected. Jack explained that humans had evolved as social creatures who survived through cooperation and mutual support. They had an instinctive drive to help others and form communities that included individuals of all types. This explained why Jack had approached her when others had not. To him, her size was not a threat, but simply another variation in the diversity of intelligent life. He saw her as an individual with unique capabilities, rather than a potentially dangerous anomaly. As their working relationship continued, Vera began to notice changes in how other beings on the station treated her. Word had spread about her success in the mining operations and her partnership with Jack. She was no longer seen as just a massive creature to be avoided, but as a skilled professional who contributed to the station's operations. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. Other species began to greet her politely in the corridors, and some even sought her out for assistance with tasks that required her unique abilities. She was becoming an accepted member of the station community, but it was Jack's continued friendship that meant the most to her. He never treated her differently despite their vast size difference and physical incompatibility. He valued her mind and character over her appearance, and had helped her find her place in the galaxy. One evening, as they finished a particularly challenging repair job, Jack made a suggestion that surprised her. "There's a celebration in the Central Plaza tomorrow night," he said. "The station is commemorating the anniversary of the first successful trade agreement between 12 different species. Would you like to attend with me?" Vera hesitated. She had never attended social functions on the station, partly because of her size, but mostly because she had never been invited. "Are you certain you want to be seen with me?" she asked. "I would not want to cause you any embarrassment." Jack looked at her with an expression of genuine surprise. "Vera, you are one of the most intelligent and capable individuals I have ever met. Any embarrassment would be entirely on the part of those too narrow-minded to recognize your worth." His words touched something deep inside her that had been dormant for years. For the first time since arriving at Keth Prime, she felt truly valued as a person rather than just a useful tool. The celebration the next evening was unlike anything Vera had experienced. The Central Plaza was filled with beings from dozens of species, all mingling together in a display of galactic diversity and cooperation. Music and light shows created a festive atmosphere, while vendors sold exotic foods and crafts from across the galaxy. Jack stayed close to her throughout the evening, introducing her to his friends and colleagues. To her amazement, she found herself genuinely enjoying the social interaction. The other beings seemed to accept her presence without the usual fear or hostility she had come to expect. As the evening progressed, Vera noticed something remarkable happening. Other large species who had previously kept their distance began to approach her. A massive Goliath trader struck up a conversation about mineral rights, while a towering Christine architect discussed the challenges of designing structures for multiple species. For the first time in her life, Vera felt like she belonged somewhere. She was part of a community that valued diversity and cooperation over conformity and fear. And it had all started with one human who had dared to smile at her when everyone else looked away. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Jack walked her back to her quarters. The corridors were quieter now, with most beings having retired for the night. Their footsteps echoed in the empty passages, creating a rhythm that matched their comfortable pace. "Thank you, Jack," Vera said as they reached her door. "Not just for tonight, but for everything. You have given me more than just employment opportunities. You have given me a sense of belonging that I never thought possible." Jack smiled up at her with the same genuine warmth he had shown from their first meeting. "Vera, everyone deserves to find their place in the galaxy. I am just glad I could help you find yours." As she watched him walk away, Vera realized that her life had been fundamentally changed by one simple act of kindness. Jack had seen past her intimidating exterior to the person beneath, and had given her the chance to prove herself. In doing so, he had not just helped her find work, but had helped her find hope. The next morning brought news that would test everything Vera had built. A massive asteroid had broken free from its orbit and was on a collision course with Keth Prime. The station's defense systems were insufficient to stop or deflect an object of that size and mass. Emergency protocols were activated, and evacuation procedures began for all non-essential personnel. But the Mining Guild was called upon to mount a desperate mission to plant explosive charges on the asteroid and break it apart before it could reach the station. Vera volunteered immediately despite the extreme danger involved. The mission would require working in open space with minimal equipment and no backup if something went wrong. The asteroid was rotating unpredictably, and its surface was covered with unstable ice that could shift without warning. Jack found her in the Mining Guild offices as she prepared for the mission. His face was tight with worry, and he looked like he had not slept since the crisis began. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "There are other miners who could handle the job." Vera shook her head firmly. "My size and strength make me the best candidate for placing the charges in the required locations. This is exactly the kind of work I am uniquely qualified to perform." "But if something goes wrong," Jack continued, his voice strained with emotion, "if the charges detonate early or if the asteroid breaks apart unpredictably, you could be killed." Vera reached out with one massive hand and gently touched his shoulder. "Jack, you gave me the opportunity to find my purpose here. Now I must use my abilities to protect the place that has become my home." Jack nodded reluctantly, knowing that arguing would be futile. Vera had made her decision, and he respected her enough to support it, even if he feared for her safety. The mining vessel approached the asteroid with extreme caution. The massive rock was tumbling through space with unpredictable rotation that made it difficult to match velocity. Vera and 3 other miners prepared to deploy onto the surface, while the ship maintained a safe distance. As they approached the asteroid, Vera could see the full scope of the challenge ahead. The surface was a chaotic landscape of jagged rocks and unstable ice formations. Deep crevices split the terrain, while massive boulders shifted position with each rotation. The plan was to place 12 explosive charges at strategic points, calculated to break the asteroid into pieces small enough for the station's defense systems to handle. Each charge had to be positioned precisely and armed manually due to the electromagnetic interference from the asteroid's unusual mineral composition. Vera worked with methodical precision, moving across the treacherous surface, with her magnetic boots providing uncertain purchase on the icy terrain. Her 4 arms allowed her to carry multiple charges while maintaining her balance and manipulating tools simultaneously. The first few charges were placed successfully, but as they moved deeper into the asteroid field, the challenges multiplied. The rotation was becoming more erratic, and the ice formations were increasingly unstable. Twice Vera had to catch falling equipment that would have been lost in the asteroid's weak gravity. It was during the placement of the 8th charge that disaster struck. A massive ice formation shifted without warning, sending tons of frozen material cascading across the surface. One of the other miners was caught in the avalanche, and his suit was damaged by the impact. Vera reacted instantly, dropping her tools and lunging toward the trapped miner. Her massive size and strength allowed her to move debris that would have been impossible for others to handle. She dug through the ice with her bare hands, ignoring the damage to her suit gloves. The miner was unconscious but alive when she pulled him free. His suit had multiple punctures and his oxygen supply was compromised. Without immediate medical attention, he would die within minutes. Vera made a decision that would have been impossible for anyone else. She gathered the unconscious miner in her arms and began moving toward the extraction point with powerful bounds that took advantage of the asteroid's low gravity. Her own suit was damaged from the rescue, and she could feel the cold of space seeping through the tears in the fabric. The remaining charges had to be placed, but there was no time to complete the mission and save the injured miner. Vera found herself facing an impossible choice between completing the mission and saving a life. She chose to save the life. Using her suit's emergency beacon, she signaled for immediate extraction while continuing to move toward the pickup point. The mining vessel moved in as close as possible, but the asteroid's rotation made it difficult to maintain position. As they approached the extraction point, Vera could see Jack through the vessel's viewport. He was wearing an emergency suit and was preparing to assist with the rescue. His face was tight with concentration and worry. The extraction was complicated by the asteroid's movement and Vera's size. The vessel could not land on the unstable surface, so she had to use her strength to leap from the asteroid to the ship's extended cargo bay. The jump would have been impossible for most beings, but Vera's power and 4 arms gave her the reach and control necessary to succeed. She landed hard in the cargo bay, still clutching the unconscious miner. Jack was there immediately, helping to secure them both and checking the miner's vital signs. The man was alive, but in critical condition. As the mining vessel pulled away from the asteroid, Vera realized that only 7 charges had been placed. The mission had failed, and the asteroid was still on a collision course with Keth Prime. Her choice to save 1 life might have doomed thousands. But as they returned to the station, Vera learned that her sacrifice had not been in vain. The 7 charges that had been placed were enough to alter the asteroid's trajectory slightly. Combined with the station's defense systems firing at maximum power, the asteroid would miss Keth Prime by a narrow margin. The crisis was over, but the cost had been high. The station had exhausted its defense capabilities, and several miners had been injured in the operation. Yet when Vera expected criticism for her decision to abandon the mission, she found only praise for her heroic rescue. The miner she had saved was named Torres, and he was a veteran of many dangerous operations. His family had been preparing to receive news of his death when word came that he had been rescued. They sought out Vera to thank her personally for giving them back their husband and father. Jack found her in the medical bay, where she was being treated for the injuries to her hands. The doctors were amazed by her rapid healing ability, but concerned about the nerve damage from her bare-handed digging through the ice. "You saved his life," Jack said quietly, as he sat beside her treatment bed. "Torres has 3 children and a wife who were preparing for the worst. Because of you they get to see him again." Vera nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "I failed to complete the mission," she said. If the calculations had been wrong, the asteroid could have destroyed the station. Jack shook his head firmly. "You made the right choice. The mission was important, but Torres' life was irreplaceable. Besides, the charges you placed were enough to save us all." Over the following days, Vera discovered that her actions during the crisis had changed her status on the station yet again. She was no longer just a skilled miner or useful colleague, but a genuine hero who had risked her life to save another. The story of her bare-handed rescue spread throughout the station and beyond. Representatives from other mining guilds began contacting her with offers of employment. The Galactic Mining Consortium wanted to hire her as a senior operations specialist, while several private companies offered lucrative contracts for hazardous asteroid work. But it was an offer from the station administration that surprised her most. They wanted to create a new position specifically for her emergency response coordinator for large-scale crisis operations. The job would involve training other beings in disaster response techniques and leading rescue operations during emergencies. Vera was flattered by the offer, but uncertain about accepting. She had found satisfaction in mining work and was not sure she wanted to leave that behind. She discussed the decision with Jack, who had become her closest friend and most trusted advisor. "I think you should take it," Jack said as they shared a meal in the station's central food court. "You have proven that you are capable of more than just moving heavy equipment. You have leadership abilities and a natural instinct for protecting others." "But I have no formal training in emergency response," Vera protested. "I am just a miner who happened to be in the right place at the right time." Jack smiled at her modesty. "Vera, you coordinated the rescue of Torres while under extreme pressure and with multiple variables to consider. You made split-second decisions that saved lives and potentially saved the station. That is exactly the kind of thinking the emergency response coordinator needs." Vera considered his words carefully. The position would be challenging and would require her to work with beings from all species on the station. But it would also allow her to use her unique abilities to help others in ways that mining work could not. After much deliberation, she accepted the position. The announcement was met with approval from throughout the station community. Vera had proven herself to be someone who could be trusted with important responsibilities and who would put the welfare of others above her own safety. The transition to her new role was not without challenges. Vera had to learn about emergency protocols for dozens of different species, each with their own physiological requirements and limitations. She studied atmospheric compositions and gravitational tolerances while developing response plans for various crisis scenarios. Jack helped her with the technical aspects of the job, sharing his knowledge of the station's systems and infrastructure. Together, they created training programs that would prepare other beings for emergency situations and established communication protocols that could function even when primary systems failed. Vera's first major test in her new role came sooner than expected. A massive solar flare disrupted the station's power grid, causing widespread system failures throughout the facility. Emergency lighting was minimal, and several sections lost atmosphere containment. The crisis required immediate response to prevent loss of life. Vera coordinated evacuation efforts while directing repair teams to the most critical areas. Her size allowed her to move through damaged sections that were inaccessible to others, while her strength enabled her to manually operate heavy blast doors that had lost power. Working alongside Jack and the station's maintenance teams, Vera managed to restore primary systems within hours, rather than the days that had been feared. Her leadership during the crisis was calm and decisive, earning her the respect of beings who had previously been skeptical of her abilities. In the aftermath of the solar flare crisis, Vera realized that she had found her true calling. Emergency response work combined her physical capabilities with her natural protective instincts in ways that satisfied her on multiple levels. She was no longer just surviving in the galaxy, but actively contributing to the safety and welfare of others. The relationship between Vera and Jack had evolved over the months since their first meeting. What had begun as simple friendship had deepened into something more meaningful, though neither had spoken directly about the changes they both felt. Their size difference made any romantic relationship seem impossible from a practical standpoint. Vera was more than twice Jack's height, and probably 10 times his weight. Physical intimacy would be dangerous, if not impossible, and the biological incompatibilities between their species created additional complications. Yet the emotional connection between them was undeniable. They understood each other in ways that transcended physical differences, and found in each other a companionship that neither had experienced before. Jack saw past Vera's intimidating exterior to the gentle soul beneath, while Vera valued Jack's courage and kindness above all else. The question of their relationship came to a head during a quiet evening in Jack's quarters. They had been working on emergency response protocols and had stayed late to complete a particularly complex section. As they finished their work, the conversation turned to more personal topics. "Jack, I must ask you something," Vera said hesitantly. "Why did you approach me that first day in the marketplace? Most beings avoid me because of my size and appearance." Jack set down his data pad and looked up at her thoughtfully. "I suppose it was because I saw something in your eyes that reminded me of myself," he said. "You looked lonely, and I knew what that felt like. But you must realize that any relationship between us would be impossible," she continued. "We are too different physically, and our species are not compatible." Jack nodded slowly. "I know that a traditional relationship would be impossible," he said. "But does that mean we cannot care for each other? Does that mean we cannot be important to each other in whatever way works for us?" Vera felt her heart race at his words. She had been afraid to hope for exactly what he was suggesting. A relationship that transcended physical limitations and focused on emotional connection and mutual support. "I care for you more than I have ever cared for anyone," she admitted quietly. "You have given me everything I have now, my job, my friends, my place in this community. But more than that, you have given me hope." Jack stood up and walked to where she was sitting. Even standing, he barely reached her shoulder, but he looked up at her with an expression of complete sincerity. "Then let's not worry about what others might think or what tradition says is possible," he said. "Let's just focus on what we mean to each other and let that be enough." Vera reached down with one massive hand and gently touched his face. Her finger was larger than his entire hand, but she managed to caress his cheek with surprising delicacy. "I love you, Jack," she said, the words feeling strange and wonderful on her tongue. "I never thought I would say those words to anyone." "I love you too, Vera," he replied without hesitation. "And I don't care what anyone else thinks about that." Their relationship developed along unconventional lines, but it worked for them. They could not share physical intimacy in traditional ways, but they found other forms of connection that were equally meaningful. They shared their thoughts and dreams while supporting each other through challenges and celebrating each other's successes. The station community gradually became aware of their relationship, and to Vera's surprise the reaction was largely positive. Many beings seemed to find their connection inspiring rather than strange. Jack and Vera had proven that love could transcend physical differences and species barriers. Some of the more traditional species were less accepting, but their opinions mattered less than the support of their friends and colleagues. The mining guild embraced their relationship completely, while the station administration saw it as an example of the diversity and cooperation that made Keth Prime successful. Months passed, and Vera settled fully into her role as emergency response coordinator. She had successfully handled a dozen different crisis situations and had trained hundreds of beings in emergency procedures. Her reputation extended beyond Keth Prime to other stations and mining operations throughout the sector. But it was her relationship with Jack that gave her the greatest satisfaction. They had created something unique and beautiful together that enriched both their lives. Jack had helped her find her place in the galaxy, while she had given him a love that he had never expected to find. One evening, as they stood together on the station's observation deck, watching the stars wheel overhead, Vera reflected on how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been a lonely outcast seeking any kind of work that would allow her to survive. Now she was a respected member of the galactic community with meaningful work and a love that transcended all conventional boundaries. It had all started with one human who had dared to smile at her when everyone else looked away. Jack had seen her potential when she could not see it herself and had given her the chance to prove what she was capable of accomplishing. "Thank you, Jack," she said quietly as they watched a mining vessel dock at the station, "for everything." Jack reached up and took her hand in his tiny one. "Thank you for letting me be part of your life," he replied. "I never imagined I could care for someone the way I care for you." Vera squeezed his hand, gently feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. Together, they watched the stars and dreamed of the future they would build together. A future that proved love could conquer any obstacle, and that every being deserved a chance to find their place in the vast galaxy. The story of Vera and Jack became legend on Keth Prime and beyond. It was told as an example of how courage and kindness could overcome prejudice and fear. How one person's willingness to see beyond surface appearances could change another person's entire life. But for Vera and Jack, it was simply their life together. A life filled with meaningful work, important friendships, and a love that had grown from a simple smile into something that would last forever. They had found in each other what they had been searching for all along: a place to belong, and someone to share it with. As the years passed, their love story continued to inspire others. Young beings from across the galaxy would come to Keth Prime, hoping to find the same kind of acceptance and opportunity that Vera had discovered. The station became known as a place where anyone could find their place regardless of their size, species, or background. And at the heart of it all was the simple truth that Jack had understood from the beginning. Every being deserved a chance to prove their worth and find their place in the galaxy. It just took one person willing to look beyond appearances and offer that chance. Vera never forgot the moment when Jack had first smiled at her. It was the moment her real life had begun, the moment she had learned that she was not alone in the universe, and that there were beings who could see her true worth. Their love story was proof that the galaxy was vast enough for all kinds of love, and that connection between souls could transcend any physical barrier. It was a story that would be told for generations, as an example of what was possible when beings chose to see the best in each other, rather than focusing on their differences. In the end, Vera and Jack had not just found love, they had found their place in the galaxy. And they had done it together, one smile at a time.